Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Marketing Blender Show Live. I'm Dacia.
Is it live or is it zombie? Because this is our Halloween edition.
Exactly. Barely live.
We're going to talk about something scary today.
Data-driven marketing.
I was going to wear my my pirate outfit and be like marketing, but I'll spare it. I'll spare our audience that.
Oh, I love that. Well, I love that you're talking about, this is scary. Becoming a data-driven marketer was a really hard one for me. Like, there was a point in my career where digital marketing is accelerating and I'm going up the value ladder in recommendations and strategic ability. And I literally would carve out time to be like, okay. We are going to get in all the tools, look at all the data, and just do thinking time on what does this mean and what am I looking at. And so while it was not something that came really naturally to me, like that turned into a framework and a point of view and something that was important in how I think and how I strategize, and then how we all teach each other, like how to get better at this and this frameworks that we've developed. So I'm excited to talk about this.
I would argue you can't be a B2B marketer without loving data. I mean, you can't be afraid of it and you can't hate it.
No.
You have to see it as your best resource for decision making. And as a fractional CMO, for example, the quality of your decisions determines the quality of your outcomes, the quality of your client relationships.
Yes.
The quality of the trust and confidence that people have in what you tell them is the right thing to do. So, yeah. Love your data.
Yeah. Well, and I want to speak to marketers specifically about this. I don't care if leadership is not asking to see your data. And I don't care if you're saying, oh, but I'm so busy, I don't have time. No, absolutely not. If you want to go up the value ladder, if you want to teach leadership to trust you, and if you want to learn to trust yourself more, you will take the time and you will build a repeatable cadence on your calendar and into your systems where you always validate what happened after you launch anything, campaign or otherwise. I want you looking at the data, and I believe that there's a pretty big heartfelt reason on why this is important that we're actually going to be talking about. So there's so many excuses. I'm too busy. My to-do list is too long. Nobody cares. And you hear it from all different versions, but at the end of the day, this is the only thing that matters is it working? And so often we get clients coming to us saying, I'm so frustrated. I don't know if our marketing's working. And we find out they haven't even bothered looking. They're looking at their P&L, but they haven't looked at any leading indicators leading up to, is marketing working? What's the role it's playing? And what is this telling us about our business development?
I'd argue there are actually two things that matter. Number one, is it working? And number two, how do you feel about it? And number two should be driven by number one, which is the data.
Yes.
So, and we see that over and over, like you were just talking about. I don't know what's going on. I feel like it's not working. You shouldn't feel like your marketing is working or not working. You should know if it's working or not working.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let's tackle a really simple question first. Where should we be recording data? Where should we be tracking data? What is it supposed to look like if we're looking at data?
Perfect world. You have the CRM and all of your data lives there and all of your reporting and your dashboards live there. You can track the life of the lead from initial contact all the way through closing and all of that. So ideally, a CRM should be helping you manage all of your data in one place.
Yeah.
However, that often does not happen. And we've used a number of different dashboard systems over the years, which all claim to bring all of your stuff into one place until you actually start trying to integrate and connect stuff. And they're like, oh, well, upgrade to another, $500 a month for that one thing that you need to track. Or, well, we're working on that integration.
Yeah.
And maybe it's 2 years down the line. So it's always going to be stuff in some different systems.
Yeah. And I have one issue with data visualization, because that's really what we're talking about. Any of these tools give these beautiful charts and graphs. Do the people looking at them know the significance of what they're saying? And typically the answer is no. Like, everybody understands what an open rate is in email or how many people clicked on our ad. but are they actually pulling that all the way through to the sales pipeline, the leading indicators of success and how it's going to eventually turn into revenue? And typically it's not. And that's, for me, the danger of data visualization is it keeps it siloed around, just the metrics on email, just the metrics on Google Ads, just the metrics on here, and we're not looking at everything.
And the funny thing is, when I am working with a client who has the dashboarding, when I'm doing an executive briefing, screenshot the dashboard slide. This is what it means. This is what we're doing. Every single report, because it doesn't explain that by itself.
There's no narrative. I love the phrase you use a lot of times, which is, the data narrative or the data story. And that's so on point. Is what is the story that the data is telling us? What are those human insights that we're getting? Because every single marketing click is a buyer choice. It is buyer behavior. And wow, there's so much to learn if you learn to ask the proper questions about the data.
Very true. And I would say also, we found that just an Excel spreadsheet that's tracking the right things in a way that's easy to understand,
I know.
That'll do it.
It's not sexy, but I believe we are very sophisticated CMOs, and we have done a lot of work to just constantly build continuous improvement. And we always roll back to a good old-fashioned scorecard and a spreadsheet. Now, even for our clients that do have business intelligence systems or anything like that, where their CRMs really are set up well, or they're paying for one of the more expensive systems, we still build scorecards in order to have healthy redundancy and to validate, because you do need to make 100% sure that you can trust the data. So,
very true.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal. Now, one thing I want to bring up about a CRM is, if you have a CRM, it is incumbent that it's about healthy human habits, the 3 H's. If you're not using your CRM properly, and or it's not being used consistently across all salespeople, all marketers, and anyone else that is engaging with this tool, it's all for nothing. So that's the thing, is software by itself is just software. Everything is about behavior change and habit adoption around software. So again, you can trust the data.
That's right. All right. Next set of questions.
Let's get into the hard stuff.
What should you track?
Okay.
I'm not going to say everything.
No.
So don't worry. You should absolutely not track everything. That's crazy.
Exactly. And I think, a little bit of a spoiler alert, we're going to give a ton of examples here. These are not, like, people should not be using this as a checklist of every single thing they should be tracking, but instead listening to this live as an opportunity for a framework to know what they're tracking.
Yes.
But I love starting out because I want people to be thinking correctly about data. Now, I already hinted at this, that it's about buyer behavior, human choices. That's what marketing data is showing you. But it's also about driving revenue. Nobody wants leads. You might be saying that you want leads. You don't want leads. You want revenue. Marketing is meant to drive revenue. So the number one thing around data is, I want you to be benchmarking success, and I want you to have strong and clear rationale around what is the definition of winning. So we want to start with revenue, and we want to back it up. And here is my big teaching thing. Like, if they listen to nothing else, they've got to learn to turn revenue goals into human markers, human metrics. So for instance, a $10 million revenue goal for a product or service or the whole company, doesn't matter. How many deals is that? Okay, because saying, we need to achieve $10 million can feel overwhelming depending on how big of a goal that is or not. But saying, that's actually just 12 deals, or it's 150 deals, doesn't matter, but whatever your average deal size. Now that's 150 human beings, or 15 human beings, or 10 human beings that need to trust you and need the value that you can provide. Now, that simple switch between financial metrics to human metrics, that's the key. That's the core break around marketing metrics that connects leadership and the data and marketing insights that can really drive leading indicators and predictable success.
And just taking that back down the funnel, if I talk to an organization, they're like, we only need 20 people, 20 deals. I'm like, and how many conversations does it take to get 20 people to say yes?
That's right.
And not just how many conversations with those 20, but do you need to talk to 500 people to get to 20?
Yeah.
And how do you get 500 people to talk to you? You put your message in front of 10,000 people to get 500 people to talk to you. So you're tracking, what does it actually take? How many humans have to do how many human behaviors to get to the revenue number?
Exactly. And it's a really common scenario to say, okay, we need to drive 500 conversations for an organization. I love it because now we go, all right, what are your lead sources? What are the assumptions or the goals that we're going to set for each of your lead sources that organizes those 500? How many are coming from trade shows? How many are coming from Google Ads? How many are coming from referrals? How many word of mouth or direct inquiries do you get, et cetera, et cetera? Is there channel partner play here? Organize that number and assign a role and a goal for that overarching number and goal that you're trying to hit. Now we know what the definition of winning is across all of your lead sources. Now we're using strategic rationale, and now you can look at something attainable and go, what's either going right or what's going wrong, and how do we adjust in order to really drive that? So I get so excited because these are calm, logical, healthy, unifying decisions that then get everybody on the same page instead of data as a beat down or data is overwhelming or data is something else on your to-do list. No. This is the pathway to progress. This is how you hit your goal and how you define clear levels of excellence inside of your marketing system. My favorite word, system. We're building a system.
Yes. And I will say for the startups out there who don't have the answers to those questions yet, that's normal. You need to set benchmarks and hypotheses, and you need to test them. And you might be completely off, but you're going to see very quickly, because you're tracking as you go along, where the assumptions were incorrect, where they need to be adjusted, and where you need to refocus your marketing efforts.
Yeah. So that's the key. We're going to start diving into examples for you guys. But remember, marketing data is about human beings. That's worthy. That's exciting. And it will tell you everything that you need, whether you're a marketer or you're a leader, about the direction that you need to head, as long as you're asking the right questions. So, all right. So let's start organizing. Like, why don't we just use how we build scorecards and start organizing for them? What should you be tracking? So again, we already gave the little caveat. This is not a full checklist, but it's a framework of things that you should consider, are these important to our business?
Exactly.
So first of all, I already mentioned it, revenue. These are lagging indicators. There's nothing you can do to change these numbers except change the tactics that drive them in the future. However, we do need to reverse engineer everything. And in a marketing scorecard, it should include all of your lagging indicators, from revenue to profit to number of deals to number of units. Whatever your final outcomes are, we want business level revenue numbers at the top of the scorecard.
And you mentioned deals. So deal or order size, what's the average? So driving back to the how many human units do you need to influence with your marketing to get there? And then profitability, that's an incredibly important thing to track from a marketing standpoint, because not all of your products or services that you sell have the same profitability. And brand has an impact on profit. So you better be able to track what's the profit margin doing as a lagging indicator of what you're doing with your marketing.
Absolutely. And then I want to see companies moving towards, sometimes they don't have this data or they need to clean it up, but I want to see client retention, and client churn. So same thing, two sides of the same coin. And I eventually want to see organization around client opportunities, cross-sells, upsells, how much share of wallet are you getting? Because again, if you have a $10 million or $100 million number, it doesn't matter. What are the core assumptions about how that number is built? And what have you already booked? What are the customers and the revenue sources that already trust you? And are you holding that operational point of view accountable? And do you have an accurate net new number? So I want to see those operational indicators in there, because marketing can and should help with client delight and client retention.
And with upsell and cross-sell.
That's right. Exactly. So those are the big business level ones. So then we go down to sales level, because especially since we're always talking about business to business, how many deals do you actually win or lose or get ghosted? That's a loss. right? But how many deals? So how many proposals are you writing and how many did you win out of this? It's not surprising anymore, but I think people would be surprised, especially if they're feeling shame. Like we don't track that. It is so common. It's so common for people to be like, we don't know. Just guess then. Guess a very low number. Like, oh, we only close 1 out of every 5 proposals, or God forbid, 1 out of every 10. Benchmark low, but you've got to make a decision around how many proposals did you have to write in order to hit that average deal size and those number of deals.
The next one I would say is current pipeline. So you've got to know what's in there. And it's, again, marketing and sales alignment is important. And understanding what's happening in the sales pipeline gives us insight into what should we be doing 90 days from now? Because you can't just switch on a marketing campaign overnight, as much as our clients would like that to happen. Exactly. It takes time. You've got to make decisions and you've got to start building.
Exactly. And in B2B, that sales journey from research and marketing engagement all the way through the pipeline and the buyer's journey when they're finally talking to a salesperson, there's a predictable timeline there. And so while I don't need clients to be checking this constantly, generally speaking, I do want them to be saying, what's our average sales cycle? Because if you initiate a marketing campaign, then you need to say, well, how long does it take for that to start producing results? And then you add the sales cycle timeline, and that's when you'll see revenue impact. And so I do want people to have a healthy understanding of what is that, because that's something that they can improve in regards to speed to revenue. I mean, it can make a really big difference. And sometimes those are small, subtle, high value changes that are not super expensive. We're still talking sales. So we talked about current pipeline. And I think the segue to the next section, of course, is where did those deals, where did those conversations, where those leads, sales qualified leads, where did they come from? So now we're talking about tracking lead source. This one is important. This is not a maybe you should consider this one. This is mission critical. Do you know what your lead sources are? And if not, start having that conversation, or at least what they should be. If you only have one lead source, hello, referrals, and you only get business from referrals, that is high risk, high risk business model. And so we want to make sure that we're balancing that. So tracking lead sources and being crystal clear what the real lead sources are, absolutely critical.
And with the understanding that just because a marketing tactic is not a lead generation tactic does not mean you cut it.
Yes, exactly. So Daisy's pointing out a really important fact that a lot of people forget, right? Like they get overwhelmed by marketing. And it's that if social media in B2B, as an example, is not always a lead generator. Oftentimes it keeps you top of mind with referrals, or it helps people believe you, or it builds thought leadership, or fills your pipeline someday. But as a hardcore lead generator, you got a lead from LinkedIn. It's not always that. Now, for some clients, it is a lead source, but asking yourself, just because we're doing it doesn't mean it's a lead source. So what role and what goal is it really playing in the buyer's journey? Because typically for most of our clients, they have anywhere between, God forbid, 1, we're fixing that, but 2 lead sources for our smallest clients, up to, well, for organizations like us, where we've been doing this for a long time, 6, 7, 8 lead sources, which is really healthy, because then you've got a really balanced, low risk, high impact marketing system. At the Marketing Blender, we have fractional CMOs and outsourced marketing teams to drive your success. The 2 most common problems that we are approached about is how do we break revenue plateaus and accelerate success, or how do we attribute marketing to revenue impact? And the answer is that we build a system, because your marketing should be driving revenue, it should be driving your reputation, and it should be driving resilience. If you want to learn more, check out themarketingblender.com.
I think we should talk about SQLs next. Sales qualified leads. This is the data that most organizations pay the most attention to, and yet they're often not tracking it in a helpful way. So when I'm talking with an organization around tracking their SQLs, we include what is the quality score, or how are we determining if these are the right people, the right leads? Because leads is one of those squirrely definitions where everybody has a different thing, in their mind of what it actually means. And with salespeople, it's, well, any lead that I closed, that was a real lead. Anything else was garbage, which is, of course, not true.
Not true.
But, understanding everybody being on the same page around how do we define sales qualified lead? So is it, if you sent a proposal to them, that meant they were qualified? Is it you had a discovery meeting and that was qualified? For Blender, it's if you're on the phone and you talk with them. So you can, that's what we consider a sales qualified lead. If they turn out to not be a fit, that's fine. There was still a sales qualified lead because you got to have the discovery conversation with them. And before that point, we don't know.
That's right.
So reaching the point of they move forward or they don't move forward, but that's what we consider an SQL. It's not the same for every organization, and that's fine as long as everyone agrees and it's rational.
Agreed. I'm just going to add some healthy redundancy here. Everyone agrees. It has been trained. Everybody knows the definition of a sales qualified lead. And especially if you have a CRM or you're about to adopt our CRM, everybody knows what button to click, what field to turn on, what to say so that it gets flagged as an SQL so you can actually track a real sales qualified lead. So completely agree. Now, we don't want to throw away marketing qualified leads, though, because very likely there is a huge portion of those that will turn into a future sales qualified lead. And so now we want the tracking to start moving down into that pre-research type of phase of the buying journey. So before they've engaged. Now, we want to remind you that in business to business, the statistics and the research shows that pretty much buyers will not engage with a salesperson until they are as much as 70 to 80% of the way through their decision making. They are pre-deciding whether to choose you or not before they even talk to you. So I could not agree more with what Daisy is saying about being really thoughtful about your definition of a sales qualified lead and how you're nurturing them and what that process is, because we really want to make sure that you have ownership over how much influence you need to be wielding while they are researching and while they are figuring out their path to progress or their pathway forward. So that does lead into what are you doing to influence that? So what are some of your favorite metrics that are human behaviors that we can track that are like, oh, they're considering making a purchase? So buying intent type of triggers.
Sure. So anytime someone can send you a signal that they are making progress, sometimes it's binge watching your content. Sometimes it's downloading this thing. Sometimes it's signing up for a webinar. A lot of it is around that earlier funnel where you might think they're just spinning their wheels. No, they're actually making more and more micro decisions along the way. So anything where you can track that particular marketing qualified lead, opening an email, watching a video, especially a video that you emailed to them.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the favorite things that they won't respond to your email. They're not going to click your call to action button all the time, but they'll often watch that video. So anytime they're consuming content that's around making a decision, that's a signal.
Yeah. And think about the kind of content too. I want people to organize, where are they supporting a human being? And there are certain content that are closer to buying triggers and buying indicators than others. So, using us as a great example, can a fractional CMO actually help my business? If they're watching this video, they are hardcore considering hiring a fractional CMO.
Yes.
That is a really good buying indicator for us, especially if it's inside of one of our funnels and people are moving forward through that. So there are some that are weighted more heavily towards their buying intent versus what are all the different ways that I could drive leads for my company? Or how do I build a marketing plan for my company? That's probably further away from the point of decision making. And so if you just calm down around the data, but Daisy's driving at, marketing jargon alert, but conversions. So are you converting interest into inquiry, or are you even converting curiosity and complications into progress and research and awareness about what you do? So conversions are really, really important, and understanding what are the key ones that show progress for the person, towards a buying decision. So website traffic, really important. what pages, like, do we have enough people even coming? What pages are they landing on? Because there are certain pages that are conversions and certain pages that are not, where they're just tire kicking and looking and, poking around. You mentioned certain types of videos, how long they're watching, that type of thing, email open rates. What are some others in that nurture and decision-making phase that you like to track?
Yeah, so I've kind of got these categorized around where you would go to track the data. So website, you mentioned, traffic. So,
Yeah.
But I like to look at like new users versus returning users, because that tells me if I'm getting more reach or if I'm just getting more interest from existing people.
Yeah.
Also, if you have a portal login, you need to remove all of that data, because your customers logging in to look at stuff in their account does not count as actual traffic.
Such a
Dwell
good
time,
one.
you mentioned top performing pages. As an example, if you see people come into your homepage and then they go into product and then case studies and then about, that is a very clear progression of figuring out, do you do the thing that I need? Do you have the thing that I need?
Yeah.
Can I trust you to accomplish what I need you to accomplish? And do I like you?
Yeah.
So that's like the kind of track that you would watch. And this doesn't work for super complicated websites, but for simple websites, this is the kind of thing where you should be looking at, yep, these are the paths that people follow.
Love it.
Dwell time on the page, how many pages did they visit? And you don't have to get granular with all of this.
No.
But if you know there are certain behaviors that people follow when they're going to make a decision, those are things to look at. Looking at the top pages that are found in Google Search Console. So this tells you what you're being found for when people search and the things that people are actually clicking on. So you can see your rankings in something like SEMrush, but Google Search Console literally tells you, oh, there were 10 people this month that found my website for this very specific keyword that's exactly who we are.
This one's really big. Most people have no idea how people are coming to their website,
No.
and they have never thought to ask that question. And that information is there. So for instance, if people are constantly coming and the source says direct, it's because they know your name and they're typing in your name. So they heard about you from something non-digital. Sometimes this is good and sometimes it's really unhealthy, depending on the traffic and the reason why they're visiting. So I love this one because it allows people to really think, what are the humans doing before they find us? And oftentimes it's, oh, we're not doing enough to be found, or we're not doing the right things and we're making some false assumptions. So I just love pulling it back into, these are human decisions and the data is right there for you to ask healthy questions.
And the nice thing about Google Search Console, which I wish was just part of Google Analytics because it's such a pain in the butt to have it separate. But the thing that I like about it is that it also tells my clients who's looking for them by name.
Yes.
Or if a whole bunch of their traffic is somebody looking for a similar company, that's not them. Because that can make their data go woo woo when it has nothing to do with who they actually are.
Yes.
I also like to make sure that we're tracking year over year and looking at seasonal trends, because
Good one.
it's easy to have freakouts over month to month.
Yeah.
Website traffic is not a month to month game. It is a year to year game.
100%. 100%. So we've talked about email, because great marketing funnels have great email, great emphasis on great. We have tons of podcasts on this one. So if you need help on email, go find that podcast. But it's interesting because identifying the role of email, if done well, should be one of your lead sources, depending on your industry, not always, depending on your sales cycles, but oftentimes, especially for professional services, it should be not just a top of mind, but eventually it produces some sort of predictable number of people that, turn in their interest into inquiry. So there's always, I just always want to point out when we're looking at this kind of engagement where somebody's been following you, they're in your ecosystem, they're opening, what role is it really playing? And if you need it to be a lead generator, making sure you're figuring out how to do that well.
So just looking at what data to track, the number one thing that I would like people to track that they never talk about is how many new subscribers are you getting?
List size, yes.
Oh my gosh, because
Yes.
everybody's like, click through this, open rate that. Are you getting more people? If so, how? Where are they coming from? What do they expect from you? So subscriber list, number one thing that you should be thinking about, how am I getting more people into the list so that I can nurture them?
Oh, great one. We have a great example recently of a client that had a highly engaged list of 1,000 people, and they wanted to get 100 people to a live event. There is no scenario where you are going to get a perfect 10% attendance rate, including attribution and no shows and all of this out of 1,000-person list. Like, it's simply not big enough. You can search benchmarks and that type of thing, but just good old fashioned. Have you ever invited people to your house for a dinner party? Like, how hard it is to get people to say yes to a live event. But immediately looking at the data, looking at list size, and even knowing this is a highly engaged list, like before we even started, we were able to say confidently to the client, this is only one thing we're going to do. We can't hit that number unless we deploy other things, and we need to do them earlier rather than later. And it ended up being successful, but that's another example of just making sure you're watching data, and are your assumptions correct? So
obviously, open rates and click rates are things to track. One of the things that's been muddying the water over the past couple of years is people's email security bots automatically opening all emails and clicking all links. So some of the email platforms are getting better at weeding that out and telling you what the real open rates are and what the real click rates are. But if you're working with something like, for example, MailChimp, where they haven't got there yet, you can still look at, do I have a suspiciously consistent number of people who clicked on every social media button in the footer of my email, because those are always bots. So you can subtract that from the total number of clicks, the total number of opens. Those are fake. But yes, you should definitely be looking at your open rates, understanding it's going to vary a lot depending on what kind of content you're sending out. Sometimes it's a monthly newsletter that people are like, oh yeah, I unless it's a grabby subject line, probably not something I'm going to open this month, but I don't want to hit unsubscribe because I like these people. Versus we have a high value, Zoom call happening at XYZ, and it's the hot topic that everybody wants to be on. You expect to have a higher open rate. Or you've got a segment of your list you're just sending regionally to for a regional event. You'd expect that to have a higher open rate. But you should definitely be tracking the open rates and the click rates. Also, with the understanding that your call to action, the value of what you're offering, and that is going to determine whether people click on it. So not every email has like a super duper great thing. And that's okay. Every email should have a call to action, but you shouldn't be giving an equal weight to every CTA and every email. I would like to say that the number of views of videos within your email is something that you should definitely be tracking, because you should be using video in your email. And it's the kind of thing that people interact with more than any other type of content you send via email.
Completely agree. I'm so trying not to scroll across video, but I'm going to go ahead. So I love that we're tracking video views. And I want to see video everywhere. I want to see video in blogs. I want to see video in email. I want to see video in social, because it's such a great conversion point that in that example, you can have a single video where you're driving traffic to a really important conversion point from email, from SEO, from social, and you're watching the conversions happen on that video, the length of time and how many people come. So using these to make sure you know what lead source, if video, for instance, is a lead source, what you're driving towards. So moving over to social media, of course, we want to be tracking followers, of course. And Samaria, I'm going to make you weigh in on this in just a minute, because that's your reach. And we want to be tracking engagement, but we want to be a little thoughtful about it. Are your buyer personas the kind of people that actually do engage? So sometimes there are buyer personas that watch and pay attention and follow, but they don't engage, which is frustrating, but it's true. Samaria, what else do you love to track when it comes to social media?
I really like to track impressions and reach. I know a lot of people call those like the more glamour analytics, but I think that it's really important to check that out, because I think it gives you kind of a overview of what your audience could be. And so then you just kind of use that information to keep tailoring the content and keep morphing your content into something that could potentially reach those people. So
I agree. I mean, it's funny, several years ago, we really didn't like impressions. They were overused. They didn't tell us a lot. And I find the last couple of years, I've really gone back to how much reach do we have, which are impressions. Are we doing enough? And I think that they've increased in value. So I could not agree with you more, because it shows the potential about what you could be doing and what you could be reaching.
There's another hidden metric that I think more companies should track, and that is your brand advocacy among your employees.
Oh, so good.
So how often are they liking, engaging with, resharing content? And this is something that you can't just tell them once they do it.
No.
You have to be able to track, recognize, reward, encourage, and nurture your employees to become brand champions on social.
Oh, I love that one. So, so good. And then competitive landscape. I know Samaria tracks competitors so that we're benchmarking. But this is how much of share of voice do you own? Like, how loud are you in the marketplace? Like, are you a little whisper compared to people, out there with bullhorns? Oh, that's not going to be really good for your sources and, and your future pipeline.
Yeah, and we didn't touch on SEO, so a great time to go back and pull that in because, share of voice, a lot of it is what are you being ranked for? What are you being found for?
Yeah.
How much visibility you have? How much actual traffic are you taking away from your competitors based on where you're ranking? Not necessarily so much with your branded keywords, but with your unbranded ones, the ones where people are looking for the thing, but they're not looking for you yet. So, what's in the top 20 for unbranded keywords, very important metric. And then digging deeper, looking at what your competitors are ranking for. Who's owning the spaces that you want to own and where? So, like you said, with share of voice, you can measure, social mentions, for example, as part of the share of voice, but you also want to be looking at what are your competitors paying for and what are your competitors investing resources in building in terms of organic SEO, because that's going to give you a very clear picture of who's winning the digital war on attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, there's probably more that we could really go into. Did we skip any big ones before I start landing the plane?
Let me take a look. Those are the ones that, like, all of our clients, there's stuff in there.
Yeah.
Most of it's being touched.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I want to point out is the order in which we went through is really important because we're talking about buyer's journey. How are people progressing through their journey? And so that means you're looking at your metrics with a clear role and goal in mind. What metrics help close more deals? What metrics help keep clients happy? What metrics really impact revenue? Back that up. What revenue or what metrics actually fill the pipeline and reflect your future revenue achievement? And then what metrics help with identifying the awareness journey and potential customers that you're going to have next year or further out? So the order in which you view your data is important because, again, you're always matching that to human behavior and the journey that they are on towards you and whether or not they need the value that you build. So that's really important. And then we mentioned this earlier, but they don't need to track all of this. I want them thinking, what's the real problem? And what are the questions that we have? And letting their curiosity and their metrics guide them towards what problems do they need to fix. We always want to see people fixing problems as close to the point of revenue as first, right? Do not bother building a huge pipeline if you can't close a door, let alone a deal, right? So shore up your sales metrics, shore up your customer metrics so that when you pour more in, you keep more. That is return on investment. And then back it out. But, the quality of the questions interprets and predicts the quality of the answers. And so really making sure, what do we need to know right now and why? And then dive into the metrics, because not all of this is equally important at all times in your business maturity.
That's true. So I think we can go into some do's and don'ts. And the first question is, how much should you trust your data? So you should never trust your data 100%. You should always gut check it on the human level, because not every piece of data is telling you the truth about your brand and about your buyers. So just because a metric is important for a different organization or even for one of your competitors doesn't mean it has the same importance to you. And of course, data can sometimes be wrong. Algorithms can get wonky, things can go strange. There was an incident with Google Analytics earlier this year where everybody's referral traffic went 1,000x. It was like all of my clients were like, oh my gosh, we're getting so much referral traffic, all from fake sites in Eastern Europe. Yes, it took Google about a month to shut down all of that, but we had to scrub the data because the data was inaccurate. So always, if something looks weird, it's like, there was this very strange thing that happened with our data, don't just take it at face value, and definitely don't make decisions as a knee-jerk reaction based on some kind of wild data swing.
Oh, that's huge. And, I just want to reiterate something you said earlier. Do track trends so that when there is an anomaly in the data, you see it coming because you've been looking over time, not just at that one blip on the data map. And then the other is do look at ratios, right? So 1 out of 10, 3 out of 10, what is the harvest that you're getting from your efforts? And I want you tracking ratios all the way through the buyer's journey, because that's where you can get more squeeze out of the lemon at each different point. So ratios are really important because it's context of what's happening.
I'd say another do is look at emerging data sources, because the platforms are getting better at providing data all the time, more data, emerging data, especially in B2B, where data tracking has been lagging behind the business to consumer space. There are ways you can get an edge on your competition by looking for new ways to track data, new sources, cleaner data, better data.
I love it. And I'm not going to chase a squirrel, but I do have to make sure that I mention, do be thinking about your data in relation to which buyer persona you're targeting. So data is, if you're on LinkedIn, it might only be one of your target markets or one of your buyer personas. It's not a blanket statement about everything. And so just remember, different tactics, different sources are supposed to be related to different buyer personas. And so just making sure that you're untangling that spaghetti around who's really behind that data.
Another good tip is avoid going down the data rabbit hole. And this one's hard. Once you start enjoying the data, it's easy to just get sucked in. But if it's not data that helps you make a decision, it's most often a time suck. So don't get pulled into looking at every single piece of data if there's nothing you can do about it.
Completely agree. And you mentioned this already, but it's just such a worthy don't that I want to bring it back up. And you use the word flail. Don't flail. Do not make knee-jerk reactions based on the data. We want good questions. We want ideas about how to solve for that. What questions are producing insights about what are we seeing? And then we want progress. We too often see people just say, oh, turn it off. Oh, good Lord. Ask lots and lots of questions before you just knee-jerk turn something off, or throw more money at it. I just, goes back to the don't always trust your data, but do trust your process of understanding the data.
Another sanity saver is don't believe you can control Google and their algorithms. The Google is going to do what the Google is going to do. So trying to figure out every up and down that happens with your rankings or your website traffic, often there's just nothing you can do but wait it out and keep doing the right thing. The best practices for SEO are actually very consistent and have been for the last 15 years. High quality content, properly optimized, give people what they want, make sure it's structured in a way that Google can understand it. That doesn't really change. So don't feel like, every Google update is the end of the world. We've found that, for example, a lot of our clients get hit by Google updates when it comes to rankings and traffic, and it takes a while to recover. But even when rankings fall and traffic falls, often the quality of the traffic improves. So what Google is actually doing is doing them a favor by more closely aligning search intent with what their website actually delivers, which is better for their website, better for their domain and authority ranking, because people are staying on the website longer. They're getting more of what they need when they get there. So don't feel like you have to control everything that's happening and respond to every piece of data. A lot of it's just make sure you keep on doing the right things and look for those opportunities to do better.
I love it. And then we hinted at this a little bit earlier. We do want people to watch competitors' data and what competitors are doing. We don't want them to believe that the competitor knows all and they're getting it all right and that everything that's going on with that competitor is what they should be doing. So do pay attention, but keep your strategy and your strategic approach, your strategic focus intact, and just use that as information, but not as gospel of what,
It's part of your SWOT analysis.
Exactly. So any final notes on data? I think that covered all the ones I wanted to.
Yep, I think that was it for me.
Data is about paying close attention to humans and serving and influencing the people that you have not yet met in person. And this gives you the insights to do that better. So we hope you've gotten what you needed from this. We thank you so much for joining us today. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that like button. And go ahead and hit those comments. And remember, any comments and questions that you post oftentimes become fodder for future episodes. And so we want to make sure that we're giving you what you want. Onward and upward, you guys.